Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Politics in a moment. We begin with a threat to the people of the United States, especially the southern part of the United States, stretching from California to Florida. And I'm joined by a Floridian, Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal. Mary, your state of Florida is very much in the target zone of the Zika virus, the Aedes aegypti mosquito, and your trips home this summer will be a concern.
It will be, John, but it's a bigger concern in Puerto Rico and also, of course, the nations of South America, which are fighting this now full on.
We have a response from the Obama administration. I read from Dr. Henry Miller's piece at the Forbes, and Henry's going to join us in a moment, that the administration seeks lots of money for enhanced detection, prevention, and treatment efforts. This includes, of course, vaccines and drugs. Henry's here to report that there is another remedy, but that Congress is bungling this, and then there might be a miracle, the unintended consequence of Mother Nature. Henry, a very good evening to you. Let's talk about the bungling first. There certainly is a lot of it in politics these days. Henry, very good evening to you. Okay, the bungling. Is it too late for your remedy of the Aedes aegypti that self-destruct? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Well, it's not too late in the sense that the invasion of Aedes aegypti transmitting diseases, not only Zika, but also dengue and chikungunya, will be around for the foreseeable future. So we still need to work on these remedies, and the sooner we can get them done, the better. In the meantime, there's literally blood on the hands of regulators, which I guess is a good metaphor since mosquitoes suck blood and so forth. But the remedy that you're referring to that we've discussed before are these genetically engineered Aedes aegypti, very elegantly engineered to have what's called a conditional lethal mutation, which means that they have a genetic change that causes them to die unless they're grown in the presence of a chemical, the common antibiotic tetracycline. So these mosquitoes are grown with tetracycline in the lab and in production facilities, and when they're released, they live long enough to mate and pass this lethal mutation on to their progeny. The progeny die in the absence of tetracycline. The parents die that have been released, and so the mosquito populations decrease precipitously. So that's an excellent and safe and viable approach. The problem is that they're regulated as a new animal drug by the Food and Drug Administration, which is a bad fit for a number of reasons. First, unlike the Department of Agriculture, FDA has no experience with similar products at all, and their statute requires that a new animal drug be safe and effective for the animal that's been treated with a drug or modified. And so it's not clear how FDA could possibly determine that this mutation, this new DNA that's been added, is safe and effective for the mosquitoes, which is what the statute would require.
But we want to kill the mosquitoes, Henry.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So it sounds, Henry.
So backward.
Henry, did you make this up?
It sounds sort of like the regulatory equivalent of a Monty Python skit.
It is we're trying to kill the mosquitoes. Let's keep them safe. And by the way, there's this other problem that it's just
we're not allowed to kill mosquitoes, right?
Affecting the children of humans. But so much for them.
Exactly. So it's really a classic catch-22. And but this doesn't seem to have occurred to the bureaucrats at the Department of Health and Human Services, where FDA is located, or the Department of Agriculture, which shunned regulation of these mosquitoes, which should have taken it, which should have regulated it. And as a consequence, FDA has been sitting on an application merely to field test these mosquitoes in the Florida Keys since 2011.
Does Congress know about this, Henry?
Congress knows about it because I and a few others have been telling them about it for the past 4 months, but there doesn't seem to be any interest. And
Henry, they've been waiting to field test since 2011. That in and of itself is extraordinary. But let's say we could wave a magic wand and Congress gave the go-ahead tomorrow. How long would it take to conduct that field test and to get something into market?
Well, there would probably have to be several field tests that could be done in 6 months to a year. What I should have said was that these have been successfully field tested in half a dozen countries, including Malaysia, Brazil, and the Caymans, and so on. And they are commercially available in Brazil and are being used now. So this is not terra incognita. This is proven, and in any case, it's an extremely safe approach to controlling the mosquito vectors.
Let's go to a new remedy you haven't written up yet. You tell us about it. Wolbachia, which is not, by the way, a subset of a Marx Brothers movie. It's an actual bacteria, Henry? Is that the way you say these things?
Yeah, it's a natural bacterium.
A bacterium, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
What is Wolbachia? It's a bacterium. Okay. What does it do, and can we get to it?
Yeah, before I tell you about Wolbachia, I should point out that this isn't a congressional problem, except that Congress is not exerting good, crisp, rigorous oversight over FDA. This is a problem with FDA and of lack of proper coordination between USDA and FDA, which is an administration problem, not really a congressional problem. Now, Wolbachia is interesting. Wolbachia is an obscure bacterium that's present that infects some 60% of insect species, as well as spiders and shrimp and other invertebrates, and it's usually present in a sort of symbiotic relationship. That is, it doesn't kill them, it doesn't make them ill, it just exists in them. But what scientists found some time ago is that when these organisms are infected with Wolbachia, they tend to be resistant to other infections at the same time. And so Wolbachia-infected Aedes aegypti have been tested recently for their ability to prevent the transmission of dengue virus, which is a problem currently in Hawaii and in other tropical.
So there's a second possible remedy, but I'm looking at this map in Forbes, and it's now, Henry. The heat is there, right? We're talking about. I've already seen, haven't I? We have victims in this country. We have deaths already.
Yeah.
Well, we have mostly secondary transmission via sex or people who have been bitten during travel to other countries. There hasn't been much local transmission, but in the U.S. By mosquitoes from person to person via mosquitoes. But we haven't gotten to the big-time mosquito season this year yet. We're approaching it, and so we can certainly expect to see some.
So if I'm in Charleston and I have a mosquito bite, do I worry if it's the month of June?
You should be concerned, particularly if you're a woman and you're pregnant, because the results of that can be calamitous. But the way that this works, the statistics are interesting. As you have more and more penetration of these mosquitoes into the population, mosquitoes that are carrying Zika, you get more people infected, and the number of cases goes up exponentially, because it becomes more likely that a mosquito that bites someone will be biting someone who has Zika circulating, and then it just becomes an exponential growth of cases.
Let me ask Mary about Jupiter or about Florida. What do you do, Mary, when you go home?
I guess you stay indoors.
Do you use spray?
Well, yes, you can use off and you can stay indoors. But Henry, I don't understand the lack of urgency here on the part of the regulators in Washington. What you're describing is something supremely urgent. Do they feel that it's somehow not their job? Do they think that maybe there will be no repercussions if, oops, we have a massive outbreak in the South? Do they think the South is a terrible place and it's okay for mosquitoes to overrun it? How do you explain this?
Yeah, we got involved with the UN when bird flu was a theoretical a few years ago, Henry. I don't see any. I mean, we have three of us. Here we are, the three of us discussing dryly, Forbes.com article about Zika. Where's the administration in yelling about this?
Well, it's called politics, and it's called incompetence. The politics part is that USDA, for reasons of its own, partly because I think they had a deputy secretary who didn't like genetic engineering, USDA didn't want to regulate this product. And the other thing is just pure incompetence. This should not have gone to FDA, which has no experience with it and which has a statutory barrier obstacle to approving it for marketing in the end.
So we're just going to take casualties this summer until they solve this next summer.
Exactly, and it probably won't be available by next summer either. These things take time, and FDA is not, in the best of circumstances, is not quick at evaluating and approving these products. You know, in the article, I quoted the fictional example of a scrivener named Bartleby in a Herman Melville story, who simply began to tell his bosses when he was asked to do things, he just said, "I'd prefer not to." And we see that in regulatory agencies because civil servants have lifetime tenure.
Dr. Henry Miller of the Hoover Institution, the Zika virus, the map is clear if you live in those states. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. I'm John Batchelor.